Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time we are going to be talking about the latest SpaceX Starship launch and, well, what happened after. We have a few different sources today, including some news articles, as well as statements from SpaceX and the FAA.
Oh, and even one from the Turks and Caicos government.
Yeah, them again. Always seems to be something with them.
I guess when you are trying to go to Mars, sometimes other places get caught in the crossfire. But I think what is so interesting about this whole thing is this tension between ambition and caution when it comes to
It's
space.
always a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so to get everyone up to speed,
Yes.
SpaceX launched its Starship rocket from Texas last Thursday. The booster returned to the launch tower without a hitch.
Classic SpaceX.
Totally. But then, like 8 minutes into the flight, things went a little sideways.
You could say that. Instead of reaching orbit, the Starship had what SpaceX is calling a rapid unscheduled disassembly.
Which is a fancy way of saying it exploded.
Yeah.
And, I mean, it was kind of crazy to watch. The live stream showed the engines cutting out
And the Starship losing altitude control.
and then just spinning like crazy before they lost communication completely.
The sources describe it as an energetic event in the aft portion of the Starship.
Meaning basically that something went really wrong in the back and they lost a bunch of those Raptor engines.
Which, as you know, are pretty important for controlling the trajectory and making sure the spacecraft can land safely.
So, yeah, not great. And remember back in January when debris from that other Starship test ended up all over Turks and Caicos.
Right.
Well, this time, the fallout was a little closer to home.
This time, the debris affected air travel pretty significantly. Major airports like Miami International,
Fort Lauderdale, Hollywood International.
even Philadelphia International had delays because of the falling debris. There were a few smaller airports in Florida that were impacted too.
Wow. So the FAA ended up activating a debris response area and even had to slow down or completely stop departing flights just to be safe. Crazy how something like that can have such a ripple effect, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
So what are SpaceX saying about all this?
Well, in their statement, they admit there was a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. I don't know about you, but I think they're having a little fun with that phrase.
Oh, absolutely. Trying to put a positive spin on it for sure.
Right. But they're also emphasizing that they are going to review all the data and, learn from what happened. And they are making a point to say that the debris landed in their pre-planned response area.
Okay, so damage control for sure. But you know what I find interesting? Elon Musk, who's usually all over Twitter, has been totally silent about this whole thing.
Now that you mention it, yeah, that is a bit strange for him.
Right. I wonder if he's laying low because of how serious this is, or if he's just letting things settle down before he says anything. What do you think?
It could be either one, honestly. It'll be interesting to see what he says when he does finally comment.
Yeah, for sure. But speaking of reactions, the government of Turks and Caicos released a statement too, and they are a little concerned. I mean, understandable after what happened last time, right?
I would be too, in their shoes.
They say they're talking with the FAA, SpaceX, and UK agencies to figure things out. They definitely don't want a repeat of January.
Makes sense. And the FAA is doing a full investigation to figure out exactly what caused the explosion, which will be really important to prevent it from happening again.
So this whole incident brings up some interesting questions about the future of space travel, don't you think? Especially for SpaceX and their ambitious plans.
Without a doubt, this is a pretty big setback that could delay their whole Starship program, which could have major impacts on their missions to the Moon and Mars.
It's not just the timeline that's affected either. Building and launching these rockets is incredibly expensive, and these setbacks can put a real strain on their budget.
You're right, and you also have to consider the impact on how the public sees them. SpaceX has really cultivated an image of being, like, innovative and daring.
Oh yeah, always pushing the limits. People love that about them. But could something like this start to make people question how safe and reliable commercial spaceflight really is?
It's certainly a possibility. This incident and how they handle it could have a lasting effect on public trust.
And it's not just the public either. Investors, regulators, even potential customers are going to be paying close attention. This might make them hesitant to get on board with SpaceX's vision.
This explosion has created a very complex situation with some big questions that need answers.
So let's get into some of those questions. What does this mean for their ultimate goal of colonizing Mars?
That's a great question to start with. We'll need to consider the impact on their schedule, their funding, and the confidence of both the public and investors. And maybe even more importantly, we have to look at the safety protocols surrounding spaceflight and if they need to be reevaluated after this.
Yeah, this wasn't just a minor hiccup. This explosion is a huge wake-up call that could impact the whole space industry.
It really is. And as we dig deeper into these issues, it's important to remember this isn't just about SpaceX. It raises important questions about the future of space travel in general.
Like, how do we strike a balance between ambition and safety? And what role should private companies play in all of this?
Exactly. It's a whole new frontier out there, and events like this remind us that there's a lot to consider.
Yeah, it feels like the Wild West out there sometimes with these companies like SpaceX just pushing forward so fast.
Oh,
But like you said, this kind of reminds us that space exploration is about more than just pushing boundaries. It's also about managing risks and making sure everyone is safe.
And not just people in space, right? What about the environment? I mean, these huge rockets going up all the time have got to have some kind of impact down here.
Oh, absolutely. And it's something that people are concerned about with all these launches, especially the greenhouse gases they release and the risk of debris building up in orbit. I mean, that could be dangerous for other spacecraft. As space travel becomes more common, this is definitely something we need to think about carefully.
It seems like this whole explosion has brought up a ton of questions, not just about SpaceX, but about the whole idea of exploring space. You hit the nail on the head. I think this is a good time for us as a society to really start talking about this stuff. We need to think about the ethics of exploring space, like how it might affect other planets and who really benefits from all of this.
It's almost like we're on the edge of a new era, full of all these amazing possibilities, but also some potential problems. It's exciting and a little scary all at the same time.
I agree with you. It feels like a huge turning point. And just like with any big change, we have to look at what we think we know, what we value, and what matters most to us. What do we want the future of space to look like? And how can we make sure it's sustainable for both humans and the places we explore?
It makes me think of those sci-fi movies where big corporations basically control space.